New sets are always incredibly exciting in the One Piece trading card game, both for players and collectors. There's new cards that come into the mix of the meta, new strategies can evolve into the game, but some sets are much more impactful than others. In terms of the leaders in EB01, we got 3 leaders that really have not made any noise at all. They're really just cope decks. And with EB02 newly released in Japan only having 1 leader, a lot of content creators felt the same. But I mean, it's always nice to test new cards, right? And it turns out we were wrong. Green Purple Luffy, an exciting new leader into the game, is a 4-life, 5,000 power green purple straw hat crew type leader. It has an activate main of once per turn, Dawn -2. If you have only Straw Hat Crew type characters in play, set up to 2 of your rested Dawn cards as active. Then this leader gains 1,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. Seems like a really cool leader when many people and many cards, right? This green Nami introduced, a brand new SR along with a couple other purple cards in Robin and Frankie are introduced, as well as a stage. But a lot of people, myself included, I will admit, was like, it feels like weird synergy. I gotta see it to believe it. And wouldn't you know, within the first day of official tournaments of EB02, Green Purple Luffy emerged as the most winning deck over in Japan. These are the amount of wins from the different like flagship kind of type tournaments, I think, that these different archetypes won. Seems pretty good, right? You're overthrowing Doflamingo right now. But a lot of people are like, okay, it's the first kind of day of this new leader, a lot of people trying it, you know, obviously there's probably a good amount of players, you know, fluctuating the wins. Wouldn't behold, the very next day there's another count and Green Purple Luffy actually wins more. Now there could have been more events in general, but hitting double-digit wins with 10. Very exciting stuff right now. And again, the logic of, well, there's probably just a lot of people excited about it and playing it, that does hold to be true. I will link this article in the description below. This is a article, like no kind of guide that you can kind of read on about the Green Purple Luffy leader that someone who did very well with it in one of these tournaments wrote. Has some really good stuff, you know, showcases a deck list as well, shows a couple of their different tournament reports that they've done with it, and a ton more. There's also extra information if you pay, but I mean, even as I scroll here, there's a lot of good stuff in this, and paid articles a lot of times are actually very helpful. So what does this deck actually look like? What is inside of this deck in its first iterations around in the format that make it so successful? I want to talk about this list first specifically, because there's a couple other things that they talk about in the description of this tweet that I think are really important to hit on. This user that got 2nd overall in their tournament, that being the Kogi Rafe Cup, I believe it's called, is playing a build of completely Straw Hat type characters, right? We have enough stuff in the format that you can build your own deck around just the Straw Hat archetype. There's so many printed across the 2 different colors. The Nami searcher, guaranteed. And another searcher that's in this list that you're going to see as a common theme. All of these things up here are deck lists, by the way. There's 2 different searchers, 3 technically within this deck. 2 of them as characters with Nami and Zorojuro right from the starter deck, but also the 1-drop event. The when you're at sea, you fight pirates event. That's this one down here, just a couple. It's basically like a top 3 for a Straw Hat, Kid Pirate, Hard Pirate searcher. You run a 4 of on the stage, and obviously one of the best events in Gum Gum Giant, right? And your 2K package within this deck are Usohachi from the starter deck as well. Sanji, the green film one that we saw in EB01, right? Very popular in Uta. And also the other Sanji, the one from, I believe it's OP07 that I told you about in a Market Watch video a long time ago that you should buy. And guess what? It's a staple and a great deck now in this format, as well as some other good counter cards in the 0-cost Gum Gum Rain counter event, right? The Gum Gum Rain counter event has great synergy within this deck because you're actually running a decent amount of bricks. The Zorojuro, no counter on it. The Sanji Pudding, one of the new cards within this deck that came out of EB02, no counter on it. The Secret Rare Luffy, also no counter on it, as well as the stage and the Gum Gum Giant if you don't have any Dawn up to use for a Gum Gum Giant, as well as the 1-drop when you're at sea you fight pirates event. There's also another non-counter card that is a familiar face as well for those of you that maybe are fans of Uta, the 7-drop Luffy blocker from, what is it, OPTCG? That blocker, putting down a 4-cost or less film or Straw Hat Crew type character, has great synergy with the 4-drop Zorojuro and many other things in your list, to be honest. Putting down a Frankie potentially, Zorojuro, and great stuff in here, right? As a 4-life leader, Zorojuro makes sense if you want to run it. Very popular in Red Purple Luffy. Same kind of thought process, right? You get to 3 life very early, so then you're able to ramp with the Zoro. Frankie also ramping as well. Now, it's also reported by this player that you are favored into Enel, Marshall D. Teacher, Blackbeard, Doflamingo, and Pluffy, which honestly kind of makes sense. Enel you have slightly favored allegedly, simply because you are a Purple Luffy kind of deck, right? It is different than the OP05 Purple Luffy, which has a great matchup into Enel, but it still has plenty strengths involving ramping and also reutilizing Dawn. Teach, you've got the Swarm potential and you've got the Dawn potential as well with these different characters, so that's a no-brainer. Doflamingo being able to reuse different Dawn and maybe even swing a couple times. We'll go over these other EB02 cards in a second in case you don't know them. Also are incredibly strong with beating out those characters, right? Your kind of base characters that you're putting down are 6,000, 7,000 power on the field. Doflamingo is 5 and 6. You get a couple extra Dawn, like through leader effect and some of the Dawn replacement that comes in that we'll talk about here in a second. You're sitting pretty. Let's go through some of these cards that we're going to frequent. The first one that I'm going to talk about, arguably the most important card within this deck, Sanji and Pudding, right? Has an effect your turn once per turn. When 2 or more Dawn cards on your field are returned to your Dawn deck, add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and set it as active, as well as an on play. The number of Dawn cards on your field is equal to or less than the number on your opponent's field. Draw 1 card. Facing other ramp decks such as Pluffy, this is a great card because that second effect, that on play effect, is going to be able more than likely to net you a card in the draw. That first effect, though, if you do not remember, has great synergy with the Monkey D. Luffy leader, right? The Monkey D. Luffy leader doing a Dawn -2 on its activate main is great for proccing the Sanji and Pudding effect. Being able, when you put 2 back, at least get 1 that's active on the field. So if you can imagine what happens when you get 2 of those guys on field, you've got yourself 2 Dawn that are coming right back as active after you do a leader effect Dawn -2. Now, Robin, we're going to see her scattered in a couple different lists, so I'll go over her real quick. She is a blocker, 3-cost 2,000 power blocker. You look at the top 3 cards of your deck on KO, Dawn -1. You can reveal up to 1 Straw Hat Crew type character, put it in your hand, then place the rest at the bottom of your deck. Really good value, right, in finding different pieces. You can go ahead on your 4 Dawn turn, play this character down for 3, maybe swing 6 with leader with that leftover Dawn, and when your opponent goes in for the attack and KOs this Nico Robin, you could do a Dawn -1, put yourself at 3 Dawn total, find something like Sanji and Pudding to play down because into your next turn, you're going to be at 5. Really, really cool stuff with this Robin. Alongside the Robin, you also have Frankie, a 3-cost 1k counter 4,000 power character. Seems a little weak, right? 3-cost 4,000 power, but let's read this on play effect. On play or when attacking, so either or on that one. If your leader has the Straw Hat Crew type and the number of Dawn cards on your field is equal or less to than the number of Dawn on your opponent's field, you can add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and rest it. Honestly, a really great card, especially when you talk about the Robin effect, right? If you do a Robin effect, this on play will be able to work because, especially if you're on like the odd curve, for example, on your 3 Dawn turn, you played the Robin, pass it off to your opponent hits the 4 Dawn turn, they go in, they swing, you do the Robin thing, you KO, you do a Dawn -1, right? Going to 2 Dawn, find the Frankie, put it in your hand. When you get to your turn, you'll hit 4 Dawn. And so then you can play down this Frankie and re-ramp yourself back up to 5 Dawn, almost as if that Robin effect never happened. Especially with the when attacking as well, once you establish it, you can more aggressively use your leader effect, especially when you have a Sanji on the field as well, because Frankie is going to help you catch back up if you you can't keep 2 Sanjis established. You've also got this going merry right here, right? It's a stage with an on-play effect, as well as an activate main effect. The on-play is if your leader's a Straw Hat Crew, draw 1 card. I mean, it's a decent card, right? It allows you to play this down, and just like Starter Deck 14 Luffy, right, playing that same stage, it replaces itself in the hand, is a non-counter card that goes into potentially something that can help you out. And with an activate main, it's going to have much more use on top of that. You can rest the stage if the number of Dawn cards on your field is equal to or less than the number of Dawn cards on your opponent's side of the field. Up to one of your Straw Hat Crew type characters gains +2 cost until the end of your opponent's next turn. This is a really good stage within the deck, not only because you're able to easily manipulate your Dawn to be able to get this to go off, but giving yourself +2 cost, especially when you talk about the different 5 cost characters, right, on this field. You've got 5 cost here, you've got 7 cost here, you've got 6 costs here, even something as great as the 4 cost. Think about something like the Doflamingo matchup or the Blackbeard matchup. If you talk about the Blackbeard matchup, this Zoro right here, the 4 cost, is very susceptible to a black hole KO, right, being a 4 cost already. With the stage, it moves it up to a 6, so you gotta use something like the 6 cost Liberation that came out in OP10, or you need to use something like Von Augur or something to do some sort of cost minus. Not even Shigan can reach a 6 cost, right? It only KOs a 5. Same reasoning with Sanji and Pudding, right? Definitely out of Shigan range being a 7 cost, but also in the Doflamingo matchup, this is not allowed to be Gravity Bladed, right? It avoids Gravity Blade, it avoids Jozu as well, 2 prevalent cards in Doflamingo that cause problems for Swarm decks. And then the same rule applies to this 6-drop secret rare that we'll get to in a second. This guy is the talk of the secret rares, right? 7,000 power, no counter on this guy, Straw Hat Crew, and Water 7 type. If your leader is multicolored and your opponent has 5 or more Dawn cards on the field, this character gains Rush, so getting access to a 7,000 power Rush character, pretty nice to be honest. And then when you do attack, right, once per turn when attacking, you may return 2 of your active Dawn cards into your Dawn deck. You can set the character as active, then add 1 card from your life to your hand. This is really, really nice for the end game specifically, right? You've got 2 Sanji and Puddings on the field. When you go ahead and use this effect, right, to restand this character, that's 2 Dawn going into your Dawn deck at the same time. So Sanji and Pudding's effect of the 2 or more Dawn bring 1 back as active is going to actually proc. So it's really, really nice because you essentially, if you have 2 Sanji and Puddings on the field, using this effect to go for game does not actually cost you any Dawn, right? Because if you got 2 Sanji and Puddings, you put 2 active Dawn back, you're going to get 2 Dawn active back because of the 2 Sanjis and Puddings doing 1 each. This person also played in a 2-on-2 cup, and in the 2-on-2 cup, as you can see right here, went undefeated as well, went a perfect 5-0 within the tournament. He played it a little bit differently on this day though, adding different things like the 2-cost Tony Chopper right from the Foxy Pirates package. Honestly, a pretty good card in itself because with different things that do Dawn minusing being your leader effect and Gum Giant Gavel, he can go ahead and get a rested Dawn back. Just once again, super great synergy, kind of running a similar package, having a 2-2 split of the Frankie and Sanji within this deck. It's a little less 2Ks, I think, than the previous list that they had posted. But again, you're running 2 of the 0-cost event, you've got Gum Giant, and you've also got some Usohachis as well as 2 Sanjis. Got a good amount of counter. Now we've also got 2 more lists from the same player, and both of the lists that we have in here are very different. This is a list that they posted on the January 31st, going 8-1 in this tournament, winning the entire tournament, right, and only losing in the first round to Katakuri. You've got only some slight differences within this deck. Playing a little bit smaller of a count of the secret rare Luffys, right? Theoretically, you really only need 1, and boosting up the Frankie Frankies also took out the 0-cost events and played this 2-cost green event. You may remember this from, I think it's Yamato that's played this. Demonic Aura 9-sword style Asura Demon 9 Flash. And yes, you need to say the entire name of this card when you play it. Has a main effect up to one of your leader character cards gains plus 3,000 power during this turn. Then you may rest one of your characters with a cost of 3 or more. If you do that rest, you can rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So, especially if you're going for game, there's a 5 or less blocker on the field. If you've got something on the field like Zorojuro or Frankie, right, that's a cost 3 or more character that you can go ahead and rest. Using this to power up something else, right, like the secret rare Luffy potentially, that's going to be able potentially to swing twice. It's really going to help you catch the end game. You've also got another card from EB02 in this list, this 4-drop Zoro. You're going to see this a couple times in the different lists. If your opponent has 2 or more characters, this character can attack characters on the turn that it is played. So especially with Swarm decks being so popular within the format right now, and it just says 2 or more characters. It's not 2 or more characters than you. It's not 2 or more characters than you. It's just 2 or more characters in general, which usually in kind of the middle stages like a 6-Dawn turn or something like that, your opponent's going to have that. It also has an on play though. If your leader is a Straw Hat Crew type, you can rest an opponent's character of a cost of 4 or less. We have a 4-cost character with 5,000 power, basically getting a pseudo rush, a Kurita Coliseum, a Kobe leader effect into other characters. Also resting a 4-cost or less. That's crazy value in my opinion. And so this list playing a full set of 4 of those probably helps in so many different matchups, and it's a 1K counter as well, so you could just pitch it if you don't want it. This same player though, a couple days later, posted a new list going 7-1 in the team's 3v3 tournament with just a couple minute changes within this list. Still running the big heavy Zoro package, has thrown in a couple Nami blockers from the starter deck 17. May not surprise a lot of you, right? This Nami blocker saying if you have 8 or more Dawn cards on your field, you can trash 1, draw 2. A great endgame kind of card, establishing a blocker, maybe drawing a couple cards that you need, and be able to have some Dawn left over to play something like the Zoro down, or maybe like a Frankie or a Zorojuro to do even more searching. Adding up the count of the 9-sword style also gets Electrical Luna in here. Electrical Luna, an incredible tech card, I would say, especially in Swarm type formats, right? All of your opponent's characters with a cost of 7 or less will not become active during your opponent's next refresh phase. That says all of your opponent's rested characters. So guess what? When you face Doflamingo, right, and they swing 5, like 7 times in a turn for 3 Dawn, that's 3 Dawn. You can freeze every single one of those characters and continuously swing at life. And the best thing that your opponent has to remove those characters that's not like in effect is just battling with the leader. That's it. They don't have rush. Also, with the trigger of just in general resting a character can help you with so many different matchups, right? Blackbeard, you know, just being able to rest a 10-drop Blackbeard, even in the Shanks matchup, right? Resting one of the 10 drops that they've got on the field that you're not going to be able to counter against. This card is such an interesting tech card, and I'm so excited to see it in this deck, especially because when you rest 3, you can use the leader effect, put 2 of the Dawn back in your Dawn deck, proc at least 1 or maybe 2 of your Sanji and Puddings. You know what? I didn't even think about this. Hold on, let me restart. This is how crazy the deck is. Okay, let's say on a 10 Dawn turn, you have 2 Sanji and Puddings on the field. You go ahead for your first Dawn, you play the Nami. The Nami grabs you, I don't know, whatever you want. Let's just say this Zoro right here. Doflamingo has all of his characters turned sideways, so you go ahead and use Electrical Luna, right? All of his characters are frozen. Everything is frozen. Will not become active during the next turn. That is 4 rested Dawn and 6 active Dawn left on the field. Go ahead, use your leader effect. You put 2 Dawn back in your Dawn deck. You put 2 rested Dawn back in your Dawn deck. You have 2 rested Dawn that are still on the field, as well as 6 active Dawn. For the first part of your leader effect, those 2 rested Dawn that you have will then go up as active, putting you at 8 active Dawn. If you have 2 Sanjis and Puddings on the field, right, that we talked about earlier, because you put 2 Dawn back in your Dawn deck, you will get 2 Dawn back from your Dawn deck as active, 1 each, putting you back at 10 active Dawn. That's crazy. You just froze an entire board on the field and searched out like a 2K, a character that has pseudo rush, a character that can attack twice. And at the end of that sequence, before you play down that character that you search for, you have technically 10 active Dawn. That's wild. You've also got this list right here that went 3-1 in a tournament that I thought was very, very nice. Playing a 1 of Nico Robin. The Nico Robin, in my opinion, really, really nice. Might be something that you never play a 4 of, but having just at least 1, maybe 2 in a deck can be very strong, right? Helps you find some pieces to be able to go in your game plan later. And also just very similar to what we're seeing, right? The Searchers, couple Frankies, Zorojuro, Usohachi, the Sanjis, some Zoros, right? The Zoro count kind of varies depending on who you are, the different techs you have, because this player having Gum Gum Rain, the when you're at sea you fight pirates, as well as that 1 Robin that we talked about. And then the Shumai Cup, right? The Shumai Cup is one of the, I would say online in the Twitter space, one of the more prevalent on social media tournaments that you can see from Japan formats, always posting different results. This list ended up winning the tournament, right? You go back to the Nami blockers right here. You've got lots of these Zoros, a playset of Uchohachis. This is the alternate, I believe, or SP. Got these Searcher events, and also this list playing 8-drop Eustace Captain Kid. I mean, if you think about it, Kid even makes sense within this deck, even though it's not searchable. If you just find it, right, you use your Nami to draw cards. I already talked about how doing 4 Dawn with 2 Sanjis and Puddings on the field will get you right back up to 10 with leader effect. So that's perfect opportunity to go ahead after you do the Nami and put Eustace Captain Kid down. Now you effectively had 2 giant blockers, 1 forcing you to swing into it. And then another Shumai Cup posting, this being one of the first days on the 28th. I think this actually came first. First and second place were 2 green Purple Luffy decks, right? Once again, we're seeing an incredibly similar list, just 2 Zoros, right? In those 2 Searcher events and 2 Gum Gum Rains. And then this list, just a little bit different, right? Running a full package of the Zoros and just 1 of the Searcher events, no Gum Gum Rains. But we see another card peeking out right here. Also from starter deck 18, Luffy Taro, 7 cost 8,000 power. Remember, it's an on play of Dawn -1, playing a purple Straw Hat Crew type character card on the field when your deck is pretty much just purple characters, right? Sangoro, Sanji Pudding, Frankie, Zorojuro. The big key here is that you're playing a character with a cost of 5 or less. What is the character that I keep talking about that synergizes so well with your leader ability that costs 5 or less? It's incredible. You've got this player right here going 5-0 in their tournament with this deck and playing it a little bit different than some of the other ones that we've saw, right? Playing both the Luffy, right, that blocker from the film in OPTCG, and a full playset of these Luffy Taros. Just really focusing on that swarm factor, right? Luffy blockers playing a 4 or less. You could play the Zoro right here. Luffy Taro playing a plethora of different characters. The Sanji Pudding, the most important in my opinion. The Zorojuro, Frankies, right? Having a full playset of Robin too within this list, knocking down the Zorojuros a little bit. Also playing this event card right here, which I think is also EB02. It is 3 cost Gum Gum Giant Pistol, a Water 7 Straw Hat Crew type card. Has an effect main. Up to 1 of your Straw Hat Crew type characters gains 6,000 power. For 3 Dawn, you get 6,000 power. Then the selected character will not become active in your next refresh phase. That's fine when you're going for game, right? You need just a little bit more to be able to secure game because your opponent doesn't have a ton of cards in hand and you got to swing with something. Go ahead, power up your little 2,000 power Nami. Use this Gum Gum giant punch or whatever. Plus 6,000 makes this Nami for 3 Dawn an 8,000 power swing. That's at least 2 2Ks. That also forces a Gum Gum Giant in another Purple Luffy match, whether that's the Mirror or OPO5 Purple Luffy, or Red Purple Luffy, or Black Purple Luffy, any of the Purple Luffys. You've also got the same person later going undefeated again in their tournament, playing multiple copies of that Gum Gum Giant punch card, with a lot of other things, a very similar list, right? The Luffy Taros, the Luffy blockers being played. And then finally, this was posted on February February 2nd, so you know it's recent. This tournament happening, having Purple Luffy being the first place and the third place list. The lists have a couple differences, right? This person opting for the blocker Luffys and running 3 Robins in this, while this player playing the Franosuke Rush character, right, as an extra 2K and playing some Frankies on top of it. This deck is so much fun. Like, I highly recommend going on YouTube and going ahead and watching some of these videos. Like, here's a matchup against Nell. Here's a matchup against Lim, one of my other favorite decks in 10. Here's a matchup that was Doflamingo. That was so exciting. Another match right here, which, what deck is this? I think Yellow Kid from OP10. This one right here again against Dofi. This one right here against Nami, right? OP03 Nami. Red Purple Luffy. Shanks. Purple Luffy. This deck is so fun to watch. And honestly, it's turning into one of my favorite decks. Like, I'm obsessed with watching this. So let me know how you feel about the deck. I believe it's on Sim, so you can start playing with the deck on the Sim if you have not already. I've showed you a lot of different builds that you can copy. And also, let me know how the audio sounds today. This is the first video ever of the new microphone that I have. It's a huge new microphone right here. And I was only able to get this microphone because of all of your support on YouTube, right? So thank you again so much. This mic, it sounds awesome, and I can really just move it around, and there's no craziness that happens. And soon I'll be getting a new camera too, because I need a new camera. Right now I just use my iPhone. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what videos you want to see here in the future. I got a couple planned, including Starter Deck 21 stuff, every single archetype that won in OP10 to prepare you for that release here soon, which is March 2025. So we've still got like a month and a half, and so much more, and including a market watch as well. One of my market watches where I talk about some of the commons, uncommons, rares that you should be getting in order to build these different decks. Thank you again so much for watching. Hope to see you in the next video. This video is too long, and I hope to see you in the next one.